What if Lisa the Painful was more like this? Be aware, during my analysis it is implied that you either played the mod for yourself or watched the stream. If you haven't done either of those things, then you'll be left with a bare bones summary of the story, with some questions or misunderstandings hindering your viewing pleasure. The link for the mod is in the description of both the stream and this video. Some things have also failed to stand the test of time and were changed, mostly character names and the like. Take for example, Rage being Stone Ramon. However, there are also characters whose personalities and roles were completely changed, some more obvious, like Rick, Cheeks and Sticky being party members, but some much less obvious, like Rando being a completely different guy. Even Brad wasn't completely the same. For example, it's implied that he's an alcoholic. Now that we're clear, let's jump into a surface level analysis of the hidden files. Here is a type of analysis that you can do with your own Kickstarter demo copy. So first of all, there's the audio and graphics folders. We're gonna check the audio folder first. First we're gonna take a peek at the background music. As you can see, there's nothing unusual, even the names are ordinary, the same as in the final game. So moving on, in the background sounds folder, there's the bathhouse entrance theme, but it's actually in the final game. And it's used, unlike in the demo, where it stays unused. There's also the motor.wav sound effect, which is used in both the demo and the final game. Now moving on into music effects folder, this is where things get interesting. There's the game over theme, and there's 3 weird files, all titled Beat Up. First folder is called Beat Up, the second Beat Up 2, and the third Beat Up 2 The Beat Up 2 folder actually has a FL Studio preset at the end. Listen and see if you can spot the difference. Now moving on to the sound effects folder, there's nothing interesting except like sound effects already used in Lisa, as well as stock RPG Maker XP sound effects. However, what's missing from the Painful is the swing sound effect from Lisa the First, this one, and also there are sound effects for Rick's flute attacks, which were cut. Take a listen. So we explored the audio folder. Now let's move on to the graphics folder. So RPG Maker XP either can't compress the graphics folder or Austin just forgot to do it. And there's actually a lot of hidden files that are interesting. Like take for example, let's see here, Brad's old name, Ren. There's other interesting sprites with interesting names like Monster, Eagle and Beast, Fishman, and I think there's Hawk or as Rando, and we'll get to Furies in a moment. So let's just see here. Here it is, Trailer Boys. This is actually a sprite sheet Austin made specifically for the trailer, with these characters specifically. Found in this situation, we'll get to it in another section of the video. Now let's take a look at the Battlers folder. Here you can see Brad, Cheeks, high-strung man. Oh yeah, this is how I made the beta OST video. There's the old man, there's Null, which is used for something I'll show you later. There's also weird names like Stone Ramon, Sinister Serpent, and Unknown, and Banshu too. And there's also Muhammad Battle. So moving on to other folders, to the images folder, for example. Pictures folder. Here you can see Cheeks, Marty Weeks, Ren, Rick, and Chris. Yeah, Chris was supposedly a character. There's also the family photo and the photo of the jump command, the fireplace, the smoke, and place names like Olathe or Mount Ironton, which was most likely a cut location. Anyways, I'd encourage you to sift through these files yourself and make your own conclusions. It's really satisfying to look at all these files and think of how the game would have been different and in what context would some of these files be used. So what are you waiting for? See for yourself. Let's start with a short summary of the game. The game starts out with a lovable bald man and a kid who seems to be his son. He urges Brad to come follow him, eventually showing off how many people he killed. Then, it's revealed that it's just a dream. Brad pukes a couple of times and goes to his gang, just in time to listen to Cheek's story about how a guy knocked him out unconscious and took his joy. Brad and the boys then go and beat up the man who definitely took Cheek's joy, and proceed to the Aurora village. Traveling further, Brad has another hallucination involving his son and a mysterious man calling him weak. Afterwards, Brad just comes to an unfinished map, his quest forever remaining unresolved, and the mystery of what happened to his son never coming to light. There were other parts of the whole story which either never made it past the planning stage or aren't included in this demo. One example of this are the 5 acts presented the game as switches. In the second act, Punkert, Wingus mutates, lamenting how Brad left him alone. In Act 2, for some reason, Marty Weeks replaces a man with a bandana in an unused bar, as well as the bartender selling Brad a photo of him and his son. Maybe Brad would have visited it multiple times. Another example is the Mr. Collins plot. It is implied that this man is fond of Buddy, the last girl, and protects her in one way or another. It is theorized that Buddy would be kidnapped during the hunt for Mr. Collins' killers. As for Hawk, Rando and the like, Austin stated that Brad and Hawk would compete for Rando's trust and the control of his army, and that Rando was one of Brad's biological children. However, it seems more likely to me that Lord Gao was actually Rando and was faking his own death, spreading rumors that a powerful man named Rando killed him. It's not official, but it's something that seems plausible to me. I'll have to preface this by saying that this is my personal interpretation of the events. First, let's see how Brad was initially supposed to be. In the earliest versions, he likely wasn't bald and sported a dope haircut, evidenced by pictures in some of the Ren files. In addition to being a joy addict, he is also an alcoholic, with several barmen shooing him away. It also seems that he's an outcast, with Marty Weeks berating him and calling him a bad influence and a loser, as well as something that might be a stretch, 2 guys not wanting to talk to Brad. It's unknown whether Marty and Lisa were planned to be related to Brad, but there are sprites of a baby and a crib, used for baby Lisa in the final version. Still, the only Marty in this version is Marty Weeks. Brad seems to be struggling from some sort of an issue regarding his son losing his face and not being strong enough to protect him, a parallel to Rando's subplot in the final game. A stark contrast from the final version, the boys seem to be much more supportive and agreeable. Judging by the game files, only Sticky would have defected from Brad. They also seem to sport another member, Wingus, who later mutates. Not much is known about him other than that he hangs out with the boys and transforms into a joy mutant in Act 2. Nevertheless, the boys seem to be bonded more by alcohol and joy than hardships as much as this content shows. Brad's son shares a lot of similarities with Rando, sans the genetics. They both get their face mutilated, with Brad failing to protect them. They both show a proficiency in fighting, though one is more brutal than the other. If we go by what Austin said, Brad's son might have been Dear Rando. There are also minor characters which are interesting. For example, Marty Weeks, supposedly Rick's twin brother. He's skeptical of joy and alcohol, and that's it. Not much characterization goes on, sadly. There are some characters that can't be found in the hidden content, like Bob Friday, who's only found in the sprites, and Coyote the Dojo Buster, who can't be found in any shape or form except in the official sprite sheet, as well as some party members, which we'll come back to later.
The Lisa Kickstarter demo shows many different mechanics that never really made it into the full game. There's a lot of these mechanics, and I'll try to, as me, the girl gamer Cory, will try to explain to you some of the mechanics that, well, could be seen from the trailer. Well, let's start. You might have remembered some of the usual highlights in the trailer. For example, the Weak and Cheeks connection, which is a Rick and Cheeks team attack, and the sneaky mechanic. Those are implemented in the game, but on a very basic surface level. For example, due to engine limitations, the game checks whether you have both Rick and Cheeks in the party every time you climb a rope, and then either adds or removes the Weaks and Cheeks connection skill. As for the sneaky mechanic, there's this code, seemingly in progress at the time of the demo, where upon pressing the L button or Q, depending on what controller you're using, the player would change his speed and crawl if a certain unlabeled switch is activated. As for the simpler mechanics of the game, there's a bit of code for Brad jumping off on a bike or giving Buddy a piggyback ride. And did you know that Brad's bike used to hop over 2 tiles instead of just one, as shown in the trailer? A bit of interesting trivia right there. However, there's no trace of it on the code as far as we know. Moving on to party management, or what's left of it. Originally, it was going to be fairly different. Instead of having a simple menu, Brad was supposed to enter a certain room where he would have to walk over to the party members, which seemed pretty tedious, and every single party member give them a choice box to add or unadd them. Fairly interesting mechanic, but I would understand why it was removed. You could also give Cheeks a nickname, interestingly enough. In the Aurora Road, when the tileset changes, along with the Ambusher, there are 2 unique mechanics. The high-strung man following you and you being able to outmaneuver him by climbing, and the pogoer, pogoing around. A little side note here, in the RPG Maker VX Ace version, judging from the unused Men at Work sheet in the Painful, the pogoers were originally going to be used in the construction area, interesting enough. However, it seems fairly redundant to say that the Oil Barrel Boys function the same as in the official demo, as well as the Ambusher working as intended, but being really easy to dodge.
Moving on to the unused mechanics, most were tested by Austin. The most interesting one, in my opinion, is the motorcycle section. You have your standard ramps, which will make you jump if you come in specific direction. There's the rocks, where Brad would fall if he's doing a wheelie and would manually have to walk back to the motorcycle, in contrast to how it is in the final game. There is also the mechanic of enemies either being mowed down, like in the final version, or dodging the motorcycle and making you fall down. When approaching them, an appropriate sound cue is played. In the baddest bicycle room, the first thing that caught my eye was the eagle throwing rocks that poison you. It might have been a stand-in for the balloon snakes from the official sprite sheet or something similar, but I can't come up with any other reasoning. There's also someone shooting a gun. It doesn't seem to be working as intended, because you're not damaged while in the line of fire. It, however, gives you a cue that it's damaging you only if you're in a collision with the event itself. There's also cheeks throwing fireballs which damage you and your party. It functions very similarly to the arrow turrets in Cindy Gallows' area. And at the end, there's an eagle flying across a rope, giving you a sound cue if you collide with it while climbing. Muhammad Battle here just gives you a bike which makes you faster, nothing else. Brad is also able to climb ladders with the appropriate sprites. In the bombs map, Austin tested two separate mechanics. The first one is, obviously, bombs. Interacting with the black ball gives you a bomb and a photograph. Then you get an option to use the bomb on the blocked door, just like in the final game. The second mechanic is pretty unique. It involves Brad picking up a box and throwing it using the down key. The box would be thrown either left or right, depending on whether Brad was turned left or right before pressing down. However, when Brad is at the ledge, a switch would be activated and he'd throw the box 5 tiles down. As far as I know, Austin didn't make a way to activate this switch in the test map. In the two unnamed maps, Austin was likely testing randomly generated stuff, as well as the ambusher mechanic. Starting on map 24, when you get to the transition to the other map, the game runs a random number generator to activate one of the switches. Switch 1 enables an empty but solid event, while Switch 2 enables Beta Queen Roger as seen in one of the trailers. The game then activates a third switch, making sure that it doesn't generate this stuff again. And this is where the implemented mechanics end. To know more about certain mechanics, we need to take a look at the common events. There are 14 common events in total. The other 320 are completely empty. So the first event is the ladder/rope event. It is used when Brad climbs a ladder or a rope. It basically checks if Brad is on a bicycle, if he's giving Buddy a piggyback ride, or when he's doing neither of those things. So it would actually look quite wonky without this event, and this event makes sure that it looks really smooth, like in the final game. The fade out and fade in events just fade out and fade in the pictures, namely picture number 1. It's used several times in the demo. The bushes event is actually used in the sneaking mechanic, so that when Brad sneaks he actually goes behind the bushes. It is activated by an unlabeled switch, actually. And the EMY puke event is just enemies puking, induced by a skill. The drinking event is one of Birdie's attacks. This one's on me. Yeah, let's see. This one. And what it does is basically make a coin flip. If the enemy isn't drunk, then it flips a coin, metaphorically, and the enemy can either get drunk or resist the alcohol. The second time you use the attack on the same enemy, it either passes out or refuses the offer. Keep in mind that passed out is a state different than knocked out. Then we have the hangover Birdie effect, when Birdie uses the puke skill. So Birdie stops getting drunk and gets hungover. If he's not drunk, then you receive this message. The You're Dying event is actually activated by a switch, which is actually present in the Bike Baddies map. It controls a variable low HP to be equal to Brad Armstrong's HP, and then if it's less than 30, it plays an annoying sound. Let me show you. Just imagine these two sounds playing repeatedly. Then we have the Poison Scroll event, which is actually a scroll, which gives Birdie the Venom attack. If Birdie is in the party, it says that no one in your party can learn that. The photo event, as you've seen, actually displays Brad's family photo with his son, and then it fades away. Team attacks was explained by Cory, so we're just gonna skip to Student's Creed. Student's Creed says, when in doubt, get out. And that's it, it plays that sound effect. Then we have the yell sound effect, which is mapped to the C button, which is actually C on the keyboard. It is activated also by an unlabeled switch, and it plays this sound. And the crawling mechanic was already explained by my friend Cory. So let's move on to the next section.
I have to preface this by saying that Austin renamed some of the original switches, like the Fall on Beast switch, which is both used in the unfinished game and in the Kickstarter demo, where it was originally called something else. There are several interesting switches and variables left in the game. The Biker Gang Duck, or Hit, are related to the dodging mechanic in the aforementioned motorcycle section. There's also a switch for the acts 2, 3, 4, and 5. It might have been following the classic 5-act structure: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouncement. 2 switches named OK and I Dunno are from the scene in the bar where Rick asks Brad how he's feeling. The available replies being OK and I don't know. Moving on to the variables, the only interesting one is girl facing, but I don't know how it could have been used.
There are 14 enemies programmed into the demo. 2 of them are already in the demo, so I'll be focusing on the unused ones. The Highway King, Beta Columbo, only has one move, called Uh-oh. He does have a corresponding troop, but his place is taken over by Bancho, Beta Peter, who has 2 attacks, a normal one and Purge, which he uses with increased frequency the lower health he has. After defeating Bancho, he bleeds out, which was the original death animation, and says "Good night, folks." The actual troop isn't used in the game at any point. As for the old man, you encounter him after he definitely stole Cheeks' joy. All he does is get tuckered out, cry, and lash out if his health is below 50%. During the fight, he asks,
"What are you people doing?"
At 50% health, he remarks,
"You guys are scaring me."
and his last words are,
"What? Why?"
The Ambusher is also an enemy used in the Cut storyline. However, he is remarkably easy to avoid, but if you do fight him, his last words are, "I'm bushed." He can dart back and forth, come out swinging, strike, and lash back if his health is less than 50%. We're gonna skip to High Strung Man and the Men's Hair Club, even though the High Strung Man was in the demo, where he says, "You walked right into my hornet's nest, ya dandy." Moving on to the Pogoer, he can strike, and when he has less than 50% health, he pounces and lashes back. His last words are,
"Sweet release! Thank you!"
The Snake is an enemy which doesn't appear anywhere in the maps. All it does is dart back and forth. At 50% HP, it becomes furious and can bare its fangs and bite. Oddly enough, defeating the Snake turns on the 61st switch. In the unmodded demo, the Snake has no image files. Then we have Sticky, whose image file is named Gang Young for some reason, and it's missing from the demo. Most of his attacks are clearly meant for him, being named Sticky Swings Wildly, Sticky Spits on You, and Sticky Hits You in the Gut. He can also, for whatever reason, check his hair. Then we have Rando Spearman, or as he's known as a troop, Paul Franklin. He can poke, and under 50% HP he can glare at you and swing wildly. His last words are, "You got lucky." Moving on to the enemies which don't have a troop in the demo files, we have the Sinister Serpent. His only two attacks are attack and uh-oh. Then we have Tigre, whose only attacks are attack and venom. And at the end, we have the most complete of the three, Birdie. He can be surprised, dart back and forth, grin, look nervous, and look lost. All other enemies are stock RPG Maker assets, except no, which fallen enemies are transformed into so that they disappear during the death animation. On an unrelated note, it seems that the enemies were mostly named after their appearance, title, or characteristics instead of their real names, unlike in the final version. Here are the enemies' stats so you can see them for yourself. While we're talking about the party members, it would be necessary to name the items they could equip, mostly for context. First of all, there are several classes of weapons, usually the difference being in their attack value. The classes are wristbands, spears, bats or sticks, knives, bows, pistols, revolvers, submachine guns, boomerangs, and staves. As for armor, these classes are shields, which go into the shield slot, hats, which go into the helmet slot, shawls, which go into the body armor slot, ponchos, which also go into the body armor slot, robes, which are leftover stock assets, and miscellaneous items, which are accessories. Do note that the Ring of Water is a stock leftover. As for the party members, first we have Brad Armstrong. His class is obviously nobody, and he equips wristbands as weapons, and both ponchos, 2 shawls, and miscellaneous items as armor. His moves and starting equipment is the same as in the demo. Then we have the boys. Rick's class is Pushover, and he can equip hats, shawls, and a couple of miscellaneous items as armor. He can also use boomerangs as weapons. Once again, his starting equipment and moves are the same as in the demo. Then we have Cheeks Gaywood, a pervert. He starts out with a butter knife, a makeshift shield, a sun hat, and a tattered shawl. He can use both knives and pistols, as well as equip shields, hats, shawls, and miscellaneous items. The only move he has is the Weeks and Cheeks connection. Then we have Sticky Angelo, a free spirit who starts out with a wooden staff, a makeshift shield, a sun hat, and a tattered shawl. He can equip staves, rods, and poles, as well as shields, hats, shawls, and miscellaneous items. His class is unique in a way that it has leveled attacks, though they're clearly meant for enemies. After the boys, we have Hawk, a prisoner who starts off with some sweaty wristbands, a sweaty shawl, and an old feather. He can equip bows as well as the sweaty wristbands. He can also equip shawls and a wider range of miscellaneous items. Then we have Felix, a schoolboy. Felix might have been a stock RPG Maker XP actor with no starting equipment, but his class is not the stock class. A schoolboy can equip wristbands as well as ponchos, shawls, and some items. There is also one unique move tied to the class, Curl Up, which gives you the curled up buff, which increases both of your defenses by a fifth. Which one of these guys do you think is the schoolboy? After that, we have Tigre, who's the same class as Cheeks and has no starting equipment. There is, however, a cleric class, seemingly a stock class which can equip revolvers, hats, shawls, and a wide range of miscellaneous items. However, his skills are generic, indicating it's unfinished. It might be a stretch, but it can mean that this class was meant for Buckets, who has graphics in the Battlers folder, listed as unknown. And last but not least, we have Birdie. He is a drunk who starts off with a pellet blaster and Grandma's shawl. He can equip submachine guns, as well as some of the shawls, hats, and miscellaneous items. His skills include Swig, Puke, and This One's on Me. Swig makes him drunk, Puke triggers the hangover event, and This One's on Me functions the same as I describe in the common events. There are a lot of missing files, both audio and graphics. These missing files crash the game if not replaced. For the audio, some of the songs like Brawlin', Burning Sunset, and Death Lingers are missing in the cut content. Power Mountain is also used, notably on Aurora Road, where you encounter the Ambusher, the High-Strung Man, and the Pogoer. There are, however, some odd files. Power Summit might be a different version of Power Mountain, which is used in the Aurora Summit. There is also XXX2, which might be a different version of XXX2 Danceman from the Painful's files. I'd assume that it's the full version of the song, Forever Turbo Heat Dance. There is also Last Stop Before Hell, which might as well be different from the one in the Painful, where it's named Last Call Before Hell Weird, the weird part implying that it's different from the original version. It was, however, uploaded to YouTube and promptly deleted. I'll post a link in my description. And then we come to this very odd file, Love Life, the battle theme for the Ambusher. I don't know if it's an existing track with a different name or a completely different one. Some might speculate that it's by Jake Kaufman, but I don't think so, since it was likely too early for him to be involved. Moving on to missing graphics, let's start off with something light. The only missing files are Hawk's Battle Sprite, the Rando Spearman, both of the Snake Battler sprites, and Gang Young. Yeah, I have no idea what Gang Young is supposed to mean. Moving on to the icons, it's missing two files that can be found in the Painful, the Red Scroll and the photo, which closely resembles that photo of Brad and his son, due to the color scheme. As for the characters, there is the Eagle, which was used for a promotional screenshot on Facebook, sprites of Sticky, and a second set of Rick sprites. A sprite sheet of Brad's son with and without his face, sprites for the bike chase, sprites for Muhammad Battle, Marty Weeks, and the Pogor, who looked like his battler sprite instead of like this, and Lord Gao, also used for a promotional screenshot on Facebook. Two odd names are Grade 2, which might be Hawk's earlier name, and Wally, a character who I have no idea about, and I doubt that he was the Wally we know today. First, let me quote Austin on Kickstarter's screenshots and trailers. Yeah, the game has made huge changes from concept to creation. Truth be told, I had fabricated most of the Kickstarter images just so I would have something to show. That's why assets are just used all over. The story of the game was never once set in stone. This concludes the analysis of Lisa Kickstarter demo's hidden assets. I didn't analyze some of the finer things like skills, states, and animations, since I'd like you to see them for yourself and come up with your own conclusions. However, if a significant amount of people are interested, I'd be happy to make it into a video. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. This is that 1K subscriber special I was talking about, and I'm sorry for making it much later than I should have, and it's partially my fault. All in all, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Here are the credits.